Welcome into a Clippers Talk Live. I'm Adam Osland, and we have a special guest here today. By the way, if you missed last last night's show. No, the last 4 shows I've done in 24 hours. Sorry, I'm discombobulated. I've been doing too many shows. You missed opening night at Intuit Dome. Had 3 different shows for you there in the live section. Yesterday had Justin Rousseau on with me. Talked a lot about the defense, Jeff Van Gundy, a little bit of Kai Jones talk. We just had a conversation, myself and Darian Vajiri now joining me here. Dime Dropper is his name. That's his alias. You know him well from the Locked On side and the Dime Dropper channel. At Locked On Clippers is where you can find him. We just did a Locked On talking about Intuit Dome, talking about Bones Highland a little bit, and the new starting 5 without Kawhi Leonard. Got clarity on that from Coach Lou postgame on Monday night at Intuit Dome. But now we got a live happening with Darian. He's come on before, but this is a little bit different. More of the Lion's Den now because it's instant reaction with people in the chat. Appreciate y'all. Darian, my guy, how we doing?
Doing great, Adam. It's a really great time to talk Clippers with the excitement of the new arena the other day. You've been doing an incredible work. I always prided myself on, outside of beat writers, having the most Clipper content out there, but you're giving me a run for my money. So it's good, and I appreciate what you're doing for the fans. And I do tend to do less during the offseason outside of the Locked On work, but season's back on, so you know it's going to be coming, and fans are blessed to get all the Clipper content that they want from you, myself, and definitely others as well.
Well, you've been an inspiration for me for a while. I see the grind you're on, and I'm trying to stand on the shoulders of giants here when it comes to Darian Vaziri and all the Clippers content he's been doing for a couple of seasons. I don't miss any Locked On episodes because
Wow.
you not just
Thank
learn
you.
about the Clippers, you learn about ball, period. As our friend, what is this? The OG, Richard would say. Okay, let's get into something here because right off the top, I want to talk about a comment that I made that you pushed back a little bit against. And I can see the reasons why. And I might be crazy for having tweeted this out. Some people think I'm crazy. I can confirm that some of the time it's accurate. And maybe this was a little bit of a hot take, but I said something to the effect regarding Kevin Porter Jr. about how I think there's a chance, a real chance, that he could end up being a starter. In fact, the actual tweet is, y'all still think I was crazy saying at some point KPJ could be starting after chants were starting for him at the Wall at Intuit Dome opening night? And Darian responded to this and just said, yes, point blank, thinks I'm crazy. And that's where this home and home came, where I went on Locked On earlier, and now he's here on Clippers Talk. So, Darian, I'll let you expand on the yes, and then I'll try to see if I have a rebuttal.
I think KPJ and Harden's games might just be a little redundant. Now, I don't think that means that they can't play together, but Kevin Porter Jr.'s whole game is he's going to dance, he's going to ISO, he's going to have the ball in his hands. And that, to me, is more of a sixth man kind of player next to James Harden. If he was able to play a little bit more off the ball, and I heard about that he's a solid catch and shoot player, but we've kind of seen none of that. When he's been in, it's been ISO, dance with the ball, pick and roll. And to be honest, he has the talent. He's made some nice step backs, snatch backs, all that. But when he's missing shots, it's going to be pretty rough, in my opinion. And I just think without Kawhi, James Harden starting, we need Kevin Porter. James Harden's going to start regardless, obviously, but without Kawhi and Norman Powell starting is what I meant to say. We're going to need something off the bench to push us, especially if Bones isn't starting. I just think he's going to have to literally run that offense off the bench, Kevin Porter. If we're starting them both and then we kind of, stagger them the rest of the game, I don't know. I just think it would be more of a natural fit for KPJ to have him as basically that sixth man with Norm starting, because he can also make a little bit in pick and roll as well. And we don't want we don't want the only 2 guys that can play making pick and roll starting and not have anyone off the bench that can do that. I mean, we would stagger them in that case, but I just think it's a more natural fit having Norman Powell off the ball and what he can do. We talked about on the Locked On side, but those curls off the ball and those actions, dribble handoffs and whatnot from the top, I just think Norm, he makes things a little bit quicker and might just be a better fit next to Harden in that starting lineup.
Look, those are all fair points. And I've kind of had that in my head as well. Like, the poor man's version of James Harden to bridge the gap between the starters and the second unit and run the second unit makes a lot of sense. I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the first half of the season. It may not happen at all this year. Maybe I should have been more specific and added a little bit of context where I think it could be something down the line. It could be something next season. If James Harden opts out and goes somewhere else, he's on a 1-1, making $35 million this year, has a player option for next season for the same amount. But if he does play this season, I think it would be for these reasons. And you brought up the catch and shoot stuff. You're right. We haven't seen much of it so far in the preseason. Coach Lou basically said with KPJ, we're just going to let him go to find out more about him and then start trimming to make him a more efficient player. That's how I interpreted things with what they're trying to see from the coaching staff's perspective, because he's got a lot of game. He's got a bag. He can play make. He can do so much for this team. You want to keep him aggressive and make him as comfortable as possible for a guy that just started playing basketball at this level again since April of 2023. So they're going to let him loose and then start to coach him up. But that may be the reason for not as many catch and shoots right now. He shot 48% on catch and shoot three-pointers in the 21-22 season for Houston. He shot 44% there the next year, his last year in the league. That's elite. That's special. That is a real shooter. And a lot of his threes are tough threes coming off the bounce. I'm sure far more than the catch and shoot variety. Does he like to take them? Is he like James Harden, where he's not as comfortable, even though he shoots a high percentage there? It's just not as repeatable of a thing because he's not used to that habit. I don't know, but it means he can play off ball some in theory. Then it comes down to, what about having another guy in the starting lineup to take the load off of James Harden, who has been playing more off the ball, somebody that plays in a very similar fashion to him? So you would think that tandem might be able to work all right. Did they have like 6 games together before James Harden went to the Brooklyn Nets, or 8 games together? Were they on that team, or was that the year before? I'm trying to think.
I think KPJ was on the Cavs, but
you're probably right. Yeah, he was probably still with Cleveland. Either way, similar styles. I would think James Harden would know where to be playing off of KPJ. That would be easy for him. And just the fact that he's going to have to do so much right now without Kawhi Leonard, we can't have him burn out early in the season. They have to find a way. And granted, they are seemingly, by having Terrence Mann in there, by having Norman Powell, they can both bring the ball up. Derrick Jones Jr. can a little bit as well. But with KPJ, Harden can play a lot off ball and save his legs. It's just so taxing. People don't take that into account nearly enough, I think. Just that high usage rating with the ball in your hands all the time and how that drains you. And that probably accounted for that month and a half stretch where James Harden didn't look very good midway through January into early March with the Clippers, when they went in that lull last season when they were about a 500 team. I like KPJ in that way, playing next to him. And to your point of, well, you want this guy coming off the bench. Look, one of them then could be staggered more. Like we hear about Norman Powell going to the bench early on in the first quarter to bring him back with the bench unit. That could happen with then James Harden or with KPJ. They could both still do that. I'm not as worried about the rotation aspect, but the biggest reason is this. We don't know what Norman Powell is going to be defensively right now. He's saying all the right things, and he's doing the right things in preseason. Is it going to go away when he has to take 15 shots in a game? And that's also tiring when they're asking more from him offensively to make up for the loss of Paul George. Granted, he's a very efficient guy. We know he can do it, but that usually takes something out of your defense. And he can ill afford, if he's given that defensive effort early on, to have slippage later in the game, because they need him to guard more tougher matchups now. He's going to be asked to, and teams are going to get him in switches. So KPJ to me just has much higher potential on the defensive end because of his size and what I've seen on YouTube mixes. Like, people don't believe this. There are actual YouTube mixes of Kevin Porter Jr. defensively. I know those Houston teams were bad on defense, man, but there's like a 4-minute mix out there with just KPJ highlights on the defensive end. 4 minutes. Like, we're talking about picking Steph Curry up, maybe not 94 feet, maybe 60 feet, and taking the ball from him, like, easily. This is somebody that, if you get him laser focused, I believe talent-wise on the defensive end, he could be special there. He could be somewhat of a menace and a guy who can guard multiple positions. Then, all of a sudden you have the perfect guy in the starting lineup to balance the offense and the defense, where you say you're sacrificing one or the other by having Norman there or by having Amir Coffey in the starting lineup instead, or Batum or Chris Dunn, where you're leaning heavily into defense. With KPJ, you might be able to have the best of both worlds. I understand it's far too early. We don't know that yet. But again, if James Harden is out any games early on, Darian, I'm guessing you'll concede this point. There's a real good chance he'll be starting in those situations.
He should be. I think the point of taking the ball out of James's hands and easing his workload is very valid, because with the starting lineup that I was saying, essentially, or the starting lineup that's slated to happen, essentially James Harden is going to have to create every single shot down the floor. Or if it's a Zubac's post up, which we already know the Clippers have never shown and proven that they're kind of really going to lean on that. Hopefully this year is the first year that we will a little bit more. But there are a couple reasons why I'm still pro Norm starting. One, I just think he's proven more as an NBA player than KPJ. Not to say that KPJ might not have a higher ceiling, like for all the reasons that you mentioned, but Norm is just a proven, consistent NBA player on good teams, not a team like that Rockets team, the 2023 Rockets. I just want to say for the record, that was the most dysfunctional NBA team I've ever watched. They just looked like they had no concept of anything on both ends. They were just playing with just young guys, no vets in the room, that kind of thing. But I still think it's hard to average 19 to 20 points in the NBA. Like, I'm not going to take that away from somebody, bad team or not. As far as my concerns, the James Harden KPJ tandem, I think while you do have two shot creators out there, I think it's going to be very take turnsy. Like, it's just basically you take turns ISOing, or you take turns doing pick and roll, kind of like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland have kind of become. And for me, with Harden and KPJ, the offense would have a chance to go very, very stagnant. I just like the fit with Norman Powell next to James Harden, especially with what we saw last season, that Norman Powell was kind of that fifth guy in that best lineup that we had, the Power Rangers lineup, the Norm, Zoo, and the big three. He just, guys that work quickly off the catch are just good with Harden, good with players that can create good shots. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to. That's one of the things that I think makes more sense for Norm to start. But I will say this, there is a real concern, though, about James Harden getting overtaxed with having to create all these shots. And that's where Norm has to show a little bit more self-creation this season. That's where Zubac mainly has to be trusted to self-create more. And you mentioned Terrence Mann. I personally don't know how much creation is in there. I know when Law Murray came on the show, he mentioned that Terrence can and should try to create a little bit more. He has the license to now. I don't know if his handle in his left hand and his confidence in his shot are quite good enough for that. And I don't think we necessarily need that. But of course, it would help to have Norm, Zoo, and Terrence up their creation, because otherwise it's really going to be on James Harden to create every single shot down the court. But that's where our defense has to really create our offense. We are leaning towards defense. We got to create turnovers. And as James Harden said the other day, we have athletes on this team. Even if James Harden's not sprinting down the floor, his ability to throw those, hit-ahead passes and those outlet passes with the athletes that we have, that will still be able to maximize Derrick Jones Jr. and Terrence Mann more than they were last season. I honestly am starting to think, and I've mentioned this on Locked On a couple times, that Kawhi Leonard might be the guy that slows the pace down the most, more so than James. I think James is comfortable with those, those outlets and those hit-ahead passes, and we've seen those in preseason. I mean, sometimes on made baskets. Yeah. That's Showtime Lakers stuff right there, off a made basket, throwing it up and getting to the fast break. So I'm still Team Norm starting, but if it becomes so much for James Harden, you're really going to have no choice, because we don't have other shot creators on the team.
Yeah, I agree. It should be Norm's opportunity first. I just wouldn't be surprised if at some point later in the season, KPJ gets a shot, or if the Clippers really struggle out of the gates and start 3-7 or start 3-8, and Coach Lue just wants to try something else out after that 10-game sample size early in the season, and it sounds like he's going with the 10-man lineup to start things off. I don't know. He may shake things up, depending on, first of all, we don't know if KPJ is going to be suspended or not, and how long that could be, and how much that could end up setting him back. All of this could be a moot point if that happens. Like, everything I'm saying right now could end up just looking like a hot take. I know some people are coming after me. Charles Gardner said, "Damn, Adam, I'm glad you were finally on board with KPJ. You dissed the guy all summer. Good man." Well, obviously, most of the stuff was off the court that is extremely disappointing with him. I've known how talented he is. What changed for me, what made me do a 180, is when the evidence changed. When Coach Lou came out at Media Day, Darian, and said, quote, "For us to have success, he's going to have a big part of that." I said, okay, they have plans for him. They know what he can do. They probably also see the similarities, of course they do, and the parallels to James Harden, and maybe that can give them continuity with their offense by having one of those guys on the floor at all times.
My thing with KPJ now is, given the conversation we had about Bones Highland on Locked On, and by the way, you guys should all check that out when it comes out in a couple hours. But if Bones is not part of the plans, if KPJ gets suspended, Adam, and Kawhi's out, Clippers are going to be in real trouble offensively, like real trouble. Like James Harden just can't just do this at age 35 every single night for an extended period of time, like creating every single shot in the half court set. I mean, I really hope they lean on Zoo. That has to be 10 post-ups a game at least if we don't have KPJ. I mean, where else are you going to generate offense? It's just, and what if James Harden's having a bad shooting night some games? Because that happens sometimes. Where are we going to go offensively if KPJ does get suspended and we don't have Kawhi? I know we're all super excited about the Intuit Dome and we don't want to be negative, but those are some real concerns.
I know. And James Harden just shot, I think, 2 of 13 at Intuit Dome opening night. He had a bad night. He's going to have nights like that. What's going to happen to the Clippers offense in the half court? You brought up those hit aheads, the advanced passes that have been going on in Seattle in that game. That was really special. Some of the mortar fire passes from James Harden to Derrick Jones Jr. He found KPJ on one who had to pass out of it. But do you think they're going to be able, or that part of their offense is going to hold up in the regular season against regular season NBA players? Because last season they averaged, I think, just under 15 points per game in the fast break, which was actually 12th. They were better than I thought when I looked at the numbers. But if they want to be, closer to the top 5, that means you're getting about 16 or 17 points in the fast break. To me, it's almost non-negotiable for this team because half-court offense is going to be difficult at times. It's going to be a grind. You better get some of those easy buckets. Do you think that style will work in the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, it has to if you're getting enough stops. If you're getting enough stops, that will and forcing turnovers, that will create the opportunities for you. I also think our offense is going to help our defense massively. When the Clippers are making shots and we get to set that elite defense with those defenders, and of course, we've talked at length about Jeff Van Gundy and how, militant he is about his defensive strategies and emphasis. I mean, we set our defense. It's not going to be easy to score on the Clippers. And there's two things for me that have been very obvious in preseason, and every fan knows about it. Our defense is going to be good. We have the personnel. And offensively, it might be a struggle at times. It's going to be very largely on James Harden and KPJ. But man, Adam, if we can just force turnovers, we will be better than people think. And when Kawhi comes back, or if he plays, this team's going to be pretty good because the defense is actually going to be amazing. I really think when Kawhi is back, it's going to be amazing. And then you have Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. Offensively, you have 2 stars. Right now, it looks kind of bleak because there's no Kawhi out there, but the potential of this team when fully healthy is showing. It's just that we're having less confidence that we're going to be fully healthy as a fan base. So that's why I feel like there's been a little more pessimism, even through the preseason and all the good signs we're seeing, just because of that mystery around Kawhi. But yeah, I think it's going to be a huge part of our offense because we're going to need to make things easier. And that starts with getting stops.
I posted this yesterday at Follow Adame on X, but I was looking at their defensive rating in the preseason, and they were second. The only problem to me was first was Portland, and third was Detroit. So I was like, are these teams just playing way harder than everybody else is because they have more to prove right now, and they have more unknowns, and people are counting them out already heading into the season? So therefore, they're playing at, a 100 level of maximum effort as opposed to other teams in the preseason that know what they have, that are going to be like, hey, we're okay on that end. We're not worried of showing off in the preseason. We can hang back a little bit. I worry about that a little bit. Now, I do think they have the personnel with the way the roster is structured to be a very good defensive team. You've talked about them being a top 5 defense. I don't think they can be top 5 unless Kawhi plays 60 games plus. Do you still believe even without Kawhi for, 25, 30 games, they can still be a top 5 defense?
Probably not. I also think it's not even just about our defense getting worse itself. It's the fact that, as I just mentioned, like I think our offense will actually help our defense so much. If we're not scoring, and today's NBA is all push the pace and try to get as many shots up as possible again. So when we miss shots and go cold, teams are going to get out in transition, and that's where any defense would look worse. So I don't know if we'll be top 5 without Kawhi Leonard. That was mainly with Kawhi Leonard, me
Fair.
having that vote of confidence about top 5. But I think we could be top 10 defensively without him, honestly.
You sound like maybe you're a little bit higher on this team after 4 games in the preseason. Is that accurate?
I would say so because I love 2 things about it. One, you know me, defense first guy. I love that we've leaned into that. It's just I'm thinking when Kawhi comes back, we can sneak up on some teams for sure, and people and fans, because nobody is considering the Clippers a threat this year. It's honestly, and I get it because of the Kawhi health concerns. It's reasonable, but even with Kawhi, people are just saying they lost Paul George, they lost Russ. They're not going to be very good. I totally disagree with that. And then my second thing was the athleticism. We've also talked about Clippers need to get more athletic. We need some youth. I know Kai Jones isn't technically signed yet, but Kai Jones, Derek Jones, Terrence, there's some really, even Chris Dunn, there's some really good stuff there in transition.
KPJ, I think, had the best lob of the game.
And KPJ as well. I can't believe I forgot about him. It's because I keep picturing him, creating shots in isolation in the half court, but he has had
because you think I'm crazy with that comment.
Yeah, he's had some great moments on fast breaks as well. So there is a real injection of youth and athleticism to this team that the 2-1-3 era never really saw. So that's where I'm a little higher on them. But ultimately, Adam, as every single Clipper season has gone the last couple of years, it's all about Kawhi Leonard's health.
It is, and it's the biggest unknown. I thought it was Will Updike yesterday who made a really interesting and informed comment about the Clippers and where this season can go, and it really encapsulated everything that I think fans are feeling right now. The excitement and also the trepidation and fear are all rooted in the same place of so many unknowns with this team heading in. The biggest one being health with Kawhi, which has always kind of been an unknown for some time. You asked me about Kai Jones on Locked On. I kind of gave you my opinions on him. I want to know how real you think his play is and just his ceiling, because we know GOAT life. He's got a big following. He's got a legion of fans that believe, probably just like he believes, he could be a defensive player of the year someday. He can be an MVP someday. Like, this is all very high ceiling talk, but I don't know. Can he be the guy the Clippers need to sustain a level of defensive identity this season, at least when he's out there, because he's still going for a G League contract?
Yeah, when I saw those comments, and we probably get some of the same, subscribers and commenters talking about Kai Jones should have been a starter over Zubats last year. Like, Clippers should pick him up and put him in the starting lineup. Like, that's obviously excessive. I was like, is this guy mentally good? Is he ready to come back to the NBA? But I have actually been more impressed with him than any other Clipper so far this preseason. He is an athlete, and I knew that, but I didn't realize just how active he would be. Like, there's a lot of athletes out there, but it's the motor. He is running the floor hard offensively. He's crashing the glass. I mean,
he doesn't get tired. His cardio is elite because of his track and field background. He does not get tired. He's like Rodman in that way.
There you go. So this guy's a special athlete, and he really feels like, from the looks of things, that he wants to prove something. This is a second chance for him. He was a first-round pick, and again, we've really had a lack of athleticism, a lack of a vertical threat. Now you're giving James Harden, who's still one of the best passers in the league, when they play together, a guy he can just throw it up to the roof of the Intuit Dome and he can go up there and get it. We haven't had someone like that since DJ or Blake. So I'm seeing some potential. Also, besides just the 2 points that a dunk is worth, that Intuit Dome, the crowd reactions on some of those dunks by Derek Jones and Kai just makes me think, how much could a huge Kai Jones block or a Kai Jones alley-oop make something happen in a game that's worth more than 2 points, that gets that wall going crazy, it gets that supporter section bouncing? I mean, he's a potential momentum changer, honestly. I really think we got to do whatever we can to get this guy on the team on either a real contract. Honestly, the two-way, that seems like the most likely thing, but I want him on a full time because let's be honest, Mo Bamba, as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago on Locked On, he has potential as well. And I'm not ready to write him off completely, but he hasn't really proven much in the NBA. Kai Jones also hasn't, but he's had less opportunity. He seems like a guy that could turn into a good rim protector, Kai Jones. And if you can rim protect and you can catch lobs and set screens, you most certainly can be a backup in the NBA these days.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, we saw late in the game in that fourth quarter against the Dallas Mavericks at Intuit Dome, guys would test the moat around the rim in that restricted area for a second, and Kai Jones forced them back out. They wouldn't even try a shot. He entered the game, I think, at the 5-minute mark of the first quarter, and immediately had that crazy block off the backboard, I think it was, that turned into an oop on the other end, breaking up a lob to Daniel Gafford. Like, those are intimidating plays that stick with you, that it's like there's a ghost player out there following you at all times when you know somebody that has that level of energy and a motor like that, that is as driven as you mentioned, a guy who's this focused and locked in right now as Kai Jones is. We got some comments here. King Charles says, "Dime, you the GOAT." And he also donated $2. So I'll send you a half. I'll send you a
no need. King Charles, appreciate you, man. I recognize you from my comment section. Much love, my man.
We also got people talking about the offense and the pace being a breath of fresh air here with Kevin. Chunk said, if you're worried about the offense when Harden is off the floor, just put Kai at the point. You know, he did bring the ball up one time, at least, in the game in San Diego, I noticed, against Brooklyn. I'll say this. One of the underrated parts, guys, watch his passing. Like, he had a pass that would have been a highlight to Derek Jones Jr., who blew a layup in the first quarter against Dallas, where he drove the lane and dumped it off to him. It was it raised an eyebrow, like, whoa, I didn't know he had that in this game. But just the traditional stuff around the perimeter for some of the handoffs and some of the little bounce passes to his guard, like, he doesn't play with the ball at all. He's always looking for a guy to give it to when he's on the perimeter. He's not trying to even think about taking a jump shot from out there. I've enjoyed him keeping the ball moving and playing hot potato out there. I think that's an underrated part of Sky Jones's game, is Fahad Sharif says. You asked me about Bones Highland and where he fits in with this team, because he didn't play and got a DNP against Dallas the other night, and did play heavy minutes against Seattle, but didn't look great, had a rough night shooting-wise. I'm going to ask you about a player I'm concerned about, Kobe Brown. I don't know yet if he has found his niche. Like, we talk about all of the things he can do pretty well, but nothing that pops, nothing that's great yet. And for a guy at his size, if he wants to play the 4, and some people put it like this, he's a 5 and a 4 or a 3 his body, basically. Like, he plays like a 5 or a stretch 5, even though he hasn't really proven that with his 3-point shooting yet. But he has the body of a 3 or a 4. He lost some weight. Maybe you could say he's a 3 now. I just don't know. You know, he's not on a 2-way. Jordan Miller is. Kai Jones is going to be. Trenton Flowers is. But it's not Kobe Brown. He's going to be up with the bigs. How do you think they use him? Like, is he going to get another 10-game stretch? Because his play has been so up and down. Summer League, G League, and now preseason.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know if Kobe Brown has really found his NBA talent. I've noticed he's a good rebounder, though. but you don't really get rotation minutes these days for just being a good rebounder. You know what I mean? And he's not he's not Reggie Evans or something, but even someone like that, that kind of role is not asked of players in the NBA now. My biggest thing with Kobe Brown is going to be, can he knock down the open three consistently enough to be an NBA player, to be a guy that lasts in the NBA? Because I think he's got a high basketball IQ. He's got a good understanding of where to be defensively off the ball. His lateral quickness is something that we have to watch. I don't think he's going to end up guarding great players that we're going to see that. But it really comes down for me that consistently shooting the three ball, because it didn't seem like a great self-creator. And I've mentioned this on Locked On. I wish Jordan Miller had the standard contract and Kobe Brown was on the two-way. I don't think he's going to get much run this season, Adam. I think if the Clippers are decimated by injuries, he'll get a chance after Amir Coffey in the pecking order. But if Jordan Miller's available for those games, he's on a two-way contract so he can play 41 games. I'd rather see Jordan Miller get some run at that 3 spot. And I don't know if I like the Kobe Brown small ball 5 switch everything concept. I just think unless our on-ball defenders are really, really good, which we have some lineups that we can play with because when you switch everything, you need guys to stay in front of the ball. You don't have a real rim protector unless you have like a crazy, Bam Adebayo or Anthony Davis that can switch 1 through 5 kind of thing. If a guy gets beat, then usually an NBA player, will score if you have a small ball lineup out there. So I'm not too high on the Kobe Brown at the 5 stuff. And yeah, he's not in the rotation right now. And I am starting to think, is there some there to last in the NBA? I'm a little concerned as well.
The Kobe Brown at the 5 seems almost like a last resort, last ditch effort to find a spot for him. It almost seems a little bit desperate. I hope that's not the case, because he does have a really high basketball IQ and he's good at a lot of things, but is he great at anything? And I'm with you. His 3-point shooting in the G League last year didn't translate from that last season in Mizzou, where he shot freaking 46%. And that was the only year he really shot it from the outside and at that level. Last year in the G League, he only shot, I think, 33% from 3. So who is he as a 3-point shooter? We got a question here, though. You brought him up. Mo Hassan said, do you see Jordan Miller getting some run against bad teams or when starters are out? We all want to see him. Is it going to happen, Darian?
When starters are out, and emphasis on starters plural, I think there is a chance. But there's also a chance that Kobe Brown is higher than him on the pecking order because he's on a standard contract and they're going to feel like, yeah, he's the guy. But I see a chance, Mo. I see a chance where Jordan Miller could. I mean, there haven't been many games that Jordan Miller's played in any capacity for the Clippers. I mean, obviously I don't watch all the G League games, but that I've watched them where I'm like, yeah, Jordan Miller wasn't that great. He's usually pretty good, and he has an amazing knack of getting to the foul line.
Yeah, he is, like, his aggressiveness and that deceleration where he can go into some long strides right at the end, and people say it reminds him of SGA or something, which is a little much, but there is something to it. Like, my feeling about Jordan Miller is he's cleared all the hurdles. Like, he's too good for the G League. He's dominated the G League. He dominated the Summer League. He's been really good in preseason in his minutes. So I want to see him against first units now, or at least more second units. Can we at least get that from Jordan Miller? Because he's passing all the tests so far, man.
Yeah, the question is he better than Amir Coffey? I don't know, but I would like to give him a chance.
Yeah, Amir's looked pretty good, I think, in preseason, especially the first game he got into, like in Honolulu. It looked like a man amongst boys. And people were high on Jordan Miller right now because we got to see him against Summer League competition. If Amir's in Summer League, then he might be averaging 30,
Yeah, absolutely.
That level of competition is everything. Kevin Sohn said Giannis said he might get traded if the Bucks don't win the chips this season. Giannis to LA Clippers. Hope he's at Intuit Dome. That's a little much.
Is that coming from NBA Centel, Kevin? I mean, if Giannis is into it, so are we, of course.
Yeah, we wouldn't turn that down. We ain't kicking Giannis out of bed or anything like that. Okay, I want to continue a conversation lastly here that we had the last time you were on this summer, off-season Clippers talk. I count this basically as in season now. It's the preseason. It started. we were talking about defensive rules and what's changed in the NBA. And I've heard you bring this up a lot on Locked On because you get frustrated. And you said this on the show earlier, talking about Ivica Zubac and guys going away from him if he misses a jumper. And we do see that too often in the NBA. Not a jumper, but a runner, a right-handed hook shot, a left-handed hook shot. His bread and butter shots that typically do go as from 5 to 9 feet out last season, he led all centers shooting 64%, and it's about 200 attempts. So it's real. But you also have mentioned with the rules how you're able to defend big guys in the post now, as opposed to what we used to see in the 90s. Where are you at currently as you're going through the eras? And I don't know how you choose what you watch and how long it takes you to get through each era, but are you in the 80s right now? Because you've been working your way up, right? Still 70s?
Yeah, so I mean, to answer the zoo question first, it mostly comes into play when dudes are fronting the post and then where the second defender is coming from. If you just, let the post player catch the ball, then it's around the same because you still have to watch that defensive. If you're coming from the weak side and you're flirting with that defensive 3-second violation, you still have to get out of there, right? So you basically have to commit to a double. If you're coming from the top, then you can kind of do the halfway thing. But if Zubac is already on the block and a guy is coming to help from the top, if he just turns over that left shoulder, that help defender is not there. He really has to commit because, if you're not building a wall, it's not going to work against a post player. And I don't think people front the post against Zoo because he's not like Jokic or Embiid or anything like that. So I don't think that those defensive rules really have come into play against the Clippers much. I think it's mainly the emphasis of the NBA now is to generate threes. And the best way to generate those threes are high pick and rolls, spread pick and rolls with, 3 shooters and then 1 screen setter. So you have that 4 out, 1 in kind of spacing. As far as the dime line, as I like to call it, I failed in my summer plans to progress. I'm still midway through the 1971-72 season. That's ABA as well. And it's very sad for me because I really want to make more progress on this. And when the season starts, I just don't have the time sometimes. And I think that's one thing I want to work on going into the season is still be able to advance in the dime line, even though I'm doing Clipper content. I even do Laker content and stuff like that as well. But this summer, it hasn't been because I've been, not focused or something has come up in my personal life. It has, but good things. Like I've began the club team with my friends this summer, and I've been coaching so many different teams, and I've gotten into the WNBA, which is kind of, stagnated that process as well. And by all means, I love it. The WNBA finals, really, really good hoops right now. So yeah, someone mentioned that I was traveling. I was gone for 2 weeks as well. And then there was one of my friends needed some help. I had to help him out a little bit with a, tough situation, life situation. So I haven't been able to advance in the dime line. It's been a huge, huge thing. I get on myself for that, but I'm going to try to continue it during the season and hopefully advance because at this rate, by the time I get to 2010s, I'm going to be 50 years old.
Well, we might have both failed with some goals this off season.
Oh, my bad. Let me answer one more question. Sorry. You asked, how do I choose what I watch? I literally, and it's in my pinned tweet on Twitter, I'm never changing it. That is literally the story of the NBA in my journey. Like I go in order. I don't even allow myself. So like when I'll see people posting highlights of games, like if someone posts like a reel of, Mark Price or Michael Jordan or Mahmoud Abdul, whoever it may be, just a highlight reel, I'll watch it. But if it's about a specific game, for the last 5 years, Adam, or more so 4 years, I've literally just kept scrolling. I see arguments on Twitter. I just keep scrolling because it's almost like I'm watching a movie and I'm trying to keep myself in the dark, even though I know some of the results. I'm trying to like not what's it called? Like forget if I've learned some things, I'm trying to forget it so I can be as in the dark as possible. Because I'll tell you, Adam, even though these things have already happened, when you watch it for the first time, you don't know the specifics. It still hits. It really hits, and it makes me feel like I'm kind of there. So it's part of the uniqueness of what I'm trying to do. So only in order.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to hit you with some spoilers here for some 90s and 80s basketball because we have talked about defensive rules. And we talked about this last time specifically where I brought up how I don't think it was so much that things were tougher back then and hand checking because that's always a judgment call. I think a lot of the pace being slower and having 10 less possessions per game back then was them absolutely bleeding the shot clock to leverage the rules at times. And I think you will see this type of stuff once you get to the late 80s and early 90s in your is it the dime line you're calling it?
Yeah. So you're saying take more time. Why would they waste time though?
Because of reasons like this, because it's just natural. I got a couple of plays here I want to show you, Dime.
Go
I
ahead.
got a couple of plays here. This is a pretty famous one. This is MJ using the rules against a guy who's 5'3" and Muggsy Bogues, who granted, like I loved Muggsy. He was one of my favorite players, and he's an athletic anomaly. I don't know if guys that short today could play in the league for 15 years. I don't think that's happening for here, Spud. I know Isaiah Thomas had his run, but he also was more skilled with his outside shooting and all that. But this type of stuff was happening a lot, and it's trash. Watch for Jordan call for the clear out so he can get an illegal defense call. Even though Muggsy does swipe it away, like Jordan points at him, haha, got it. Like,
But look,
it is. I hate it, Don.
Okay, but look at this. Oh, you want to
see it again?
I want to see it again because I was not showing out something.
Warner had to go high to get it.
Okay.
Might go with Muggsy on him. Look at this.
Clear out.
But look, freeze it for a sec.
Look at this. Look at this. This isn't basketball.
Adam, where Parrish is would still be illegal now. He's sitting in the paint. That's a defensive 3-second violation. He needs, if he wants to not execute the rules, he's got to sit here.
I mean, it's close. It's close. It's close. He might have got out in time. 2,000. He might have got out in time. I'm just saying, like, aside from that, you know what Jordan's doing here. You know what he's doing.
I agree. But here's the thing, right? If Robert Parrish comes in doubles, he can still double.
He can, but he has to come all the way over. He can't just guard. Like, he can't just sit in space. And that's what I think I was talking about. You bring up the rules now and say, look, it's not like teams play zones all the time.
Yeah,
you're right.
If you go back to the clip, though, do you see who was at the top of the key? He was not arm's length. That's what I mean. As you say with handshaking, that's a judgment call in that own way.
It is.
Sagging off the top of Pippen or whoever, and whoever that was at the top of the key, just sitting there.
But he still can't do anything. He
can have his arms out.
He can't do anything to MJ there. I just don't like the intent of taking advantage of the rule, which was happening a lot back then. I'll give you a couple more.
But what I also want to say, are you ignoring that the hand checking and the usage of hands on perimeter players was more back then? Because if you watch the 04 Pistons versus the 06 Pistons, what Tayshaun Prince is allowed to do to Kobe is not what he was allowed to do to Wade. I've talked to Pistons fans that have acknowledged this. I mean, it's not coincidental that you have all these small guards winning MVP after 04. You have all these, all those 30-plus point per game scorers. And now it's the game is so in favor of guards. The peak James Harden era was like, it was absurd what was getting called. It was actually insane. The perimeter contact, it's just nowhere near the same for me.
I wish I could pull up a game from that series with MJ getting hand-checking calls left and right in 95 against the Charlotte Hornets that were trash, that were terrible phantom calls.
You keep mentioning Jordan and one player, though. It feels like this is a bigger rooted interest. Okay, go ahead.
I got more. Here's another.
It always comes back to the 90s. I mean, and the 70s.
Leveraging, well, only because, first, Darren, I'll say this. I worship 90s basketball. I have every basketball card in existence from the years 88 to 93. I was hardcore. I mean, this was what I loved. But when I go back and watch it, a lot of times I'm going, damn, this is such terrible basketball. This is such garbage. Some of these long twos they're taking, what are they thinking? Like, these teams could have won a series if one team just actually knew about analytics back then. It changes everything. Like, and I know we all get smarter with time. I'm just saying it's like an old movie that you used to worship, and then you go back and watch it, and it doesn't hold up. And that's how I feel about the 90s now.
The long twos, though, that was a thing even 10 years ago. And there are things today that
I
make you
agree.
go nuts. I mean, the 3-on, some of the fast breaks are insane with the transition. That stuff only looks good when it goes in. Like, to me, filling the lanes like the Lakers and the Celtics in the 80s did, that's better basketball to me in terms of how you run fast breaks. Because then you see these kids that think they're NBA players stopping for three and not filling the lanes. I have to yell at them at practice. It's a whole thing. Like, to me, it's terrible, some things that goes on, but I'm willing to watch these clips as well.
I'm not saying basketball was perfect back then or back now, just like it was back then. Like there's issues now. Taking 35 3-pointers a game is a problem. It's smart, but I don't think it's good for the game. Ralph Lawler in our interview said he thinks they should move back the line and take away the corner threes because it's too easy for guys nowadays.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. It's fine.
Ralph Lawler said it, all right.
I don't think it's too easy. How much has the percentage even gone up though? Like it's like
I mean, they basically like they shoot, I think last season it was 36.6% from three overall. That doesn't include,
range,
open threes, range, all of that. That's just threes overall.
If the overall percentage hasn't increased drastically, though, I don't think there's any reason to change things like that.
But if you look, like most threes back in the day, like they just dared you to take it. Like the amount of threes that are guarded now that are high degree of difficulty shots that are made versus threes missed that were wide open back then, it's night and day. I'm telling you.
And also, but I will and in counter of that, the what's it called? The drop coverage and the mid ranges that are now given to guys due to the fact that they'd rather have them take pull-ups. Those were usually contested from back in the day. This area is super congested, so.
Okay,
there are things to give and take, but I agree for the most part. I mean, in my era in the 2000s, there were threes, unless they were known bad shooters, weren't that open.
Look, you're way more fair. I'm arguing against like other people, basically. I'm just
I'm still down to watch. Again, I'm down to watch any of these clips. Like I don't care. Like I'm down to watch anything. So right now, Stockton, left side of the court.
So you're going to see them get Carmelo.
Hold on, though. This congestion is pretty wild right now. Right now, it's pretty crazy. That's, by the way, this is great. I don't like Carmelo, but this is great post position, Adam. This is really good post position. He's right around the basket.
It's great, but I think this might be the Knicks. You can't tell because the quality is so poor.
It is the Knicks.
But they're doing it again. These clear outs, they do it all the time in the 90s. Like.
Why can't go back?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got to wait. What's his name? Where's the five? Is Carmelo playing the five or is this guy?
Camby's over here.
Okay.
So it is the Knicks.
So
he
this is
a clear recovers very late.
This is a clear exploitation of the rules. And if this what's it called? I agree that this is not good for the game.
Terrible.
But see, I never in the 60s and 70s and the early 80s, I've never seen that before.
I know.
Because here's the thing, right? Putting Greg Ostertag at the perimeter is like doesn't actually help his skill set at all. Like you want him there for offensive rebounding.
That is leveraging the rules and nothing else.
I agree with that. But here, don't you think that natural space, let's just talk natural spacing of now, right? If you have a stretch big, you can still get, though, hypothetically, like Zubats can get that same kind of look if there's a stretch big out there, no?
Possibly. Yeah. I'll one more because it's funny because you can hear Bill Laimbeer mic'd up here. This is funny. So I don't know what this is 1989, I guess. I got to share the screen, Adam. Don't just talk about it. Be about it. Here's Bill Laimbeer, and I'll keep the sound on here so you can hear him. He comes over late on the double. You had to double on ball back then, but it's too late.
Vinny's put together an 8-point fourth quarter.
Is it not working for you?
Bailey pops out against Aguirre. Dumars cheating that way. Stockton passed up a shot. We have an illegal defense as Laimbeer leads his case to NF Rush. Vinny's put together an 8-point fourth quarter.
It could have been.
Bailey pops out against Aguirre.
Hold on. Wait, how much he's sagging off? That's not arm's length either, by the way. Joe
cheating that way.
What you was sagging off on the pass, like
fourth quarter.
Freeze it right there.
Bailey.
John Stockton now would be encouraged to shoot this every single time.
Yeah.
He's a good shooter.
And they gave it up back then, and they still weren't shooting it. It was a novelty,
Well, that's because
no.
that's part of the
It's
early existence of
yeah, it's
basketball,
evolution.
discouraging those shots so to get a better shot around the basket. That's just how strategy was. Because here's the thing: if you do miss this shot, right, and Stockton, I think he would shoot a good percentage on these kind of shots. If you miss this shot, it's exactly what coaches would say. It's you're not working the defense around, you're not working the ball around, you're settling. So there's if it doesn't make, that the process isn't great. That's the thing.
Here's the problem. Like, if he shoots 33% from here, it's the equivalent of 50% from here.
See, that stuff, wasn't taken into account. But I'll say this, right? The physical toll that whoever's guarding Thurl Bailey right now has to have of bumping and grinding, as opposed to Joe Dumars letting Stockton shoot, it's partially making the defense work as well. So that's why these conversations are really good, though. This helps grow the game, and it's like you have different strategies. That's why I'm big on knowing about the strategies of the past.
Completely.
Because there is even for me, right? Like, okay, KPJ comes up for our team and shoots a three, semi-contested, and no one gets the ball, no one moves around. A possession with throwing it down to Zubats and forcing the defense to either double or play D without fouling, that's making them work a little bit. But the math that you're talking about still probably exists. And Stockton would shoot better than 33%, in my opinion. He's a good shooter.
Yeah. I'm saying, especially because that would have been a wide open three if the defender stays there. So he's probably shooting like 42% in those situations. But sometimes I think people feel like, oh, it's automatic if you just give it to a big man on the block. The numbers don't say that. Like, it's not automatic, especially when that second guy is coming over and you're trying it then. I guarantee you, when you watch the 90s and they're forcing stuff on the block, you will see so many misses. And you might be surprised by it. It's not a skill thing. It's just harder when it's congested like that. So even though people just assume, I'll just give it to him on the block and let him go to work, the percentages do not line up with that it's an automatic bucket at all.
Zubats, though, has a pretty decent percentage, though, no?
The 5 to 9, yes. I think I don't know what his restricted area. He was like top 50 in restricted area. So he hasn't been as good there, which some people, criticize him for fumbling the basketball or he doesn't get everything to go. And there's some truth to that. He's only like top 50 there. But the percentages are really close to one another. So you could be top 50 and it means you're 1% down from being, top 30. It's really tight.
Here's my question, though, and I'm curious to watch this when I get there. When they're, trying to exploit the rules like that and putting a non-shooting big out on a Greg Ostertag onto the perimeter, why wouldn't Greg Ostertag's man just double? You know what I mean?
Hard double.
Yeah.
I think
he's
it
not
was
out there. He's gonna have to dive, and if he does dive, the center might want to recover. You think he's gonna cut? You know what I'm saying? Because if he dives, that would be a good ball. If he's diving to the basket and making him guard two, but
I think it's because of reasons like Lambeer there. That gets called illegal defense just because at the last second the guy gets rid of the basketball. And I think that stuff was happening at times. You can make the argument, yes, it might have just been a bad call. But I think guys were hesitant to run back because they feel like in the time they get there, they may get called for it still. It may not happen. Yeah, he's so far away from the ball.
I'm interested to see it because I actually, until a little before the dime line, I didn't even know about that rule. And I'd watched classic games before, so I never even noticed it. So I'm interested to see it because right in the 60s and 70s, none of that happens. There's no exploitation of anything like that. It's just you pass the post and you move. It's very it's a lot more closer to what we see now in the sense of the speed and their emphasis on. I mean, it wasn't necessarily analytics, but when the shot clock was first introduced, it's basic math: more shots, more points. And they weren't necessarily valuing possessions. I made a reference on the last Locked On episode that it was like a 60s game with the amount of reckless turnovers and passes because it was more like let's just get up and down. Let's just get up and down. So,
if the furthest you can go back when it comes to tracking pace, at least at Basketball Reference, is 73-74. And they had about 108 possessions per game then.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Crazy endurance.
They were playing at a breakneck pace. For reference, we think they play fast today. It's at 98.
And mind you, this is with commercial flights, with nowhere near the same kind of equipment and shoes and all that. And there's no load management. I mean, it's insane what some of the guys were doing. Obviously, their careers weren't as long, but it's really insane to me how they were doing all that, playing that pace.
If you look field goal percentage, then was they had it 45%, and they're not even taking threes then.
Yeah, but
Like,
it's congested, though, as you said. It's very
It
congested.
is, but they also were just like, get it down there as fast as possible and get a shot up.
Right, 100%. And it was even worse in the 60s. It slowed down more in the 70s because they started thinking, okay, let's feed the ball through our best players. Let's have a little bit more process to this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was more intelligent design going on than just if we get up more shots, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Loyola Marymount. All right.
Guru of Go, baby.
I appreciate you staying on. I didn't mean to keep you on this long, but I love the conversation, Dime, and I love talking about the old school game, and I love the fact that you're going through the eras. And you're like me. You search for the truth. You don't care about your bias. Some people will call you out and say, "Hey, are you willing to say that James Harden is way better than Russ yet?" As Chuck says.
Can I answer this? I don't know where people got the impression that I thought that Russ was better than Harden.
Yeah,
I like Russ more because he's from UCLA. And when we sold him the vision of him coming to the Clippers and being the point guard we never had, I just didn't like that we looked to replace him. But I actually, and the Russ fans will hate me saying this, but I would take James Harden over Russ all the time because he peaked higher. I saw it. You know what I mean? But I love Westbrook. Like, that's just my guy. Like, he'll always be my guy. Like, he plays with so much passion and emotion, and I love that because that's how I am. But I never thought Russ was better than Harden. I don't know where anybody got that impression.
See, and I also think when you talk about who peaked higher, I think while neither of them have won, I think James Harden's style of play would lead to more championships. And to be fair, I think he already has one if it's not for the best team of all time with the Golden State Warriors adding KD.
You know, the late, great Jerry West would say the same thing, even though he got a championship. He'd be like, look, I would have way more rings if not for that. And then Barkley would come and say, I would have more rings if not for Jordan.
But you can be a victim of your era. Point blank, I think that Houston team is one of the best teams of all time, and they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I don't know. I can't stand Mike D'Antoni. It's circumstantial, but you got to – I mean – they had some
obviously
chances.
Win based upon injuries in the playoffs. Like the Raptors, as much as I love Kawhi, I don't think they're beating that Golden State team if they're fully healthy.
In Game 6 of 2019, the Kevin Durant wasn't playing, and the Rockets at home going to make it Game 7. What happened? James Harden threw the ball away on an inbounds pass and missed a point-blank layup. I watched the game. All the Harden stands can check me with those facts. I watched those games, and I had no bias there. And also, I can't stand Mike D'Antoni. I think it's just karma he's never won. Emphasizing only offense and just jacking and having one guy have the ball that much in his hands. I'm not a fan of Mike D'Antoni. To me, he's the epitome of everything I hate about the game, even though he's very innovative in his own way. But yeah, I think Harden is again, Westbrook. The thing with Westbrook is he's just a little too erratic for me. Yeah, I need a point guard that's like people are not gonna like. Like when I do, part of why I did the dime line is because everyone talks all-time lists, and I just thought like, how can I compare Westbrook to say, or even a CP3? Let's use Chris for an example because I've watched him since day one. Chris and Westbrook too, but Chris versus Stockton. I am not. Thank you, Shark in the box for the nice words. How could I compare John Stockton to Chris Paul? I've watched Chris Paul from day one. I've never even seen a full playoff series that John Stockton has played. So I'm like, I'm going to watch to really form my own opinions. And by knowing why the game is played a certain way and how these changes have happened, it'll allow me to more properly evaluate. So that's part of why I did it. But when I do my list, Adam, Russell Westbrook on my point guard list is not going to be where people think because I need my point guard to be trustworthy with the ball. I need my point guard to be the guy that I trust the most in big moments. And Russ, he's always had this delusional confidence in his jump shot. That's just held him back to me. And I remember being in middle school defending the guy and saying, yeah, he takes some bad shots now and sometimes he gets ahead of himself, but he's young. We're at 2024 and we still kind of had the same conversation. So like, it's like this, Adam. Would you rather have Chauncey Billups or Dennis Johnson if you're trying to win a ring or Westbrook? Like, I think it's an interesting conversation. Westbrook could do what they never could do with his own team. But if you go Chauncey Billups at the height of his career and Dennis Johnson, those guys were winners wherever they went. So
no, I'm taking Chauncey all day because I trust him with the basketball. I trust him defensively to give that effort. And obviously, Mr. Big Shot for a reason. I know some of the overall numbers don't line up with that, but he had plenty of big shots and was a freaking finals MVP.
Yeah, that's one guy that the efficiency will never do him justice, Chauncey Billups. I don't know why. I didn't feel like he was that inefficient in real time. Also, the era, though, we talk about inefficiency. Right. The early 2000s was like
Dead ball.
Jam packed, all that. But it always felt like he made those big shots. And shout out to Chauncey for being a Clipper. Like that was special for me, even though it was short lived with the Achilles tear. And then after that, he wasn't the same. Those first like 16 games or whatever it was in 2011-12 season, like just having Chauncey Billups on my team, it was so surreal, man. Like he just adds to the collective IQ of your team.
I told Chauncey one time on a phone call, he was coming on for a radio interview at AM 570. This is 08-09, so he's in Denver. I told him on the call, as we're letting him go off air, Chauncey, thanks for beating the Lakers for me in 2004. You know what he said? I'm going to do it again for you this season. But Denver lost in that Western Conference Finals, unfortunately, the Trevor Ariza play. I love Chauncey Billups.
Yeah, that was, I mean, he doesn't get quite enough credit for that at times for me. That 09 Nuggets team before 2023, that was the best Nuggets team I'd ever seen. And it was because Chauncey, and remember, he replaced a good Allen Iverson. There's been this narrative that Iverson was like washed or something.
No.
He was the best player for the Nuggets in that 08 first round against the Lakers where they got swept. And then they got Chauncey Billups, and they just turned that whole thing upside down. So shout out to Chauncey Billups, man.
You brought up for a second, I just want to bring something up here regarding point guards and all-time lists. You brought up CP3 and Stockton. I think they both had a little bit of the same Achilles heel, not looking for their shot enough when they were very efficient scorers. Would it shock you if I told you John Stockton has less than 15 30-point games in his NBA career?
Not really. It wouldn't really shock me. Because
he played like one of the longest careers ever. He's got less than 15 30-point games.
I mean, because I really got to learn Stockton's career more. Like, what was his bag? His handle looks really tight, but like, what was his bag really like? I mean, was it really just because he looked, he's also a smaller guard. How much he looked to score is relevant. And also the times, like, I mean, how many true scoring point guards were there? Because at that time, the designation has been made. Like, and plus, if you're playing because now point guards are encouraged to shoot more with the spread pick and roll. Like, that's how you create shots for others, is like, we always talk about it. Your point guards need to be able to score to open it up for everybody else. Back then, your point guard instructed to get the ball to your better scorers. So,
yeah,
I think
it was more traditional. But he is a 38% career three-point shooter. Like, he was so deadly from three. I always was scared of Stockton because the Kings played him in 99. It was the first year where they had C. Webb and Vlade and those guys, and they lost to him in 5. And it was a huge deal because it was a first-round series after Utah's coming off of being in the finals the year before. Right. So we hated Utah and Ostertag and all these guys. And Stockton hit, I think it was game 4 or game 3, a game-winning three-pointer. It might have been over White Chocolate, Jay Williams, to bring it back to Utah when the Kings, I think, had a 2-1 lead in the series or something. Stockton scared the hell out of me.
Do you think he was held back by the times?
Oh, yeah. Like, okay. He's shooting, like, he's taking, oh, my God. He averaged 1.5 attempts from three in his career per game. I mean, this is insane. Yeah. Like, he could easily put up 7, 8 3-pointers per game now. Like, he could take it off the dribble, too, I believe. Like, 100%. That's the game-winning shot he makes against Houston in 97.
Yeah.
Like, Stockton could create.
Yeah, that's really an interesting conversation. I'm also going to look for this. So you know how like I'm a big hater of like excessive ball pounding. When I was a kid, I used to be a ball pounder, so like that's part of why it's part of my maturation of my own life. But I never noticed it was CP3. But now I go back and watch the games at him. I'm like, Jesus, like he's still getting us a good shot, but he is pounding that. He wants to get an assist so much, and I'm thinking like, if does Stockton do that a lot? Because I seen CP3. I think it's held him back in ways.
Oh, I'm sure there was some of that. Obviously, Utah could get out and run, especially like early 90s, late 80s. Karl Malone is a complete tank. Like, people think of him from the finals runs. He's a different player than with his mid-range. He ran a lot and was a force in the open court. I think part of the reason, though, with CP3 ball pounding was they didn't have good creators at the 2 or the 3 next to him most of the time.
Can I play devil's advocate? And again, I'm if Chris Paul is the best Clipper of all time to you or anyone, I have no pushback on it at all. But we had Caron Butler, we had Chauncey Billups, and we purposely, when they saw Willie
Billups was like post Achilles,
right? No, okay, let me rephrase though. We had him pre-Achilles, right? And then when he came back, he wasn't. Even when we had Chauncey Billups in 2012, he wasn't the perfect fit. Having Randy Foye and Willie Green to me and how much success that we had with it inspired them to go out and get Redick. And we had Caron Butler, who was another guy we could throw it to, obviously on the older side, but he was still decent for 13 points and could get his own shot. And we let them go. And to me, it's because CP3 wanted the ball. And we felt as though that was the most efficient way to go, is having CP3 and Blake, having an off-ball guy in Redick that can move off the screens, and then your glue guys, Matt Barnes and DJ, and then off the bench, you had Austin and Jamal, or DC, Darren Collison and Jamal. So I feel like, to me, if you're going to position a roster with Blake and Chris Paul as your best guys, they were looking at maximizing it that way. So to me, I don't think CP3 gets a pass for that. And then eventually realized, maybe I'm not the number one. Let me go play with Harden, and he was close to getting it done.
Yeah, I think that's mostly accurate. It was also not so much, I think, that it was hubris from him. It was still the playing style back then. If you had a floor general like that, you wanted him to have the ball in his hands a ton. But I do think it was part of the downfall for the Clippers, because he should have been often the most efficient shot was CP3 taking it. But he wasn't taking nearly enough. Like, he never averaged 20 points per game with the Clippers. I know he was right underneath it, but that's crazy to me with how efficient he is out there.
Yeah, I think now, if you put that CP3 back then in maybe 4 years after he left the Clippers, and now it's more encouraged to push pace and stuff, he probably would have had more possessions, more shots to get to that 20-point range. Because the fact that Chris Paul averaged 20-plus points in 09 and 08 is pretty wild looking back, honestly. But I still stand by to this day. If you look at the entire tenure, Clipper Chris Paul is the best version of him. Like, it's not even, to me, it's not even debatable with any Hornets fans.
He just, like Stockton, needed to be more aggressive with his offense. He did.
Yeah, and I think more aggressive with his offense in the shot taking category and less in the dribbling category. Because sometimes it just, because it's not that he didn't have the ball in his hands enough. He loved that ball in his hands. CP3,
but he wasn't looking for his own as much. He was looking to create for others and get the assists. No, I'm with you. All right, that's a good way to end things. Okay, good going through eras with Dime Dropper here on Clippers Talk on Alive. Appreciate all you guys in here. I know you enjoyed this because Locked On is a staple. I listen to it every single episode and day during the regular season now, and during the off season too. I can't get enough Clippers content. So, Dime, give me something else later tonight, okay? We can't just put up an interview with me. I need one more.
I got well, see, on my regular channel, I'm gonna have vlogs and all that and reactions all season long as well. If people want to see me, if the people see me at the games, please come up and be in the video. I want to showcase all your guys' opinions for people, because they always say we have no fans. I'm gonna show them that that's not the case. And my last thing is, I actually do have something planned later. I'm doing a full Western Conference standings prediction with on my channel with my guys from New York. So that'll be fun.
By the way, this is a false narrative that teams discourage a mid-range shot. They discourage it from guys that shoot less than 45% in the mid-range. They have the numbers. If you're good at, like, Kawhi and shoot 47% in the mid-range, they tell you to shoot it. I don't know what CP3's numbers were.
They're pretty good.
I'm sure they are. They should be. But some people think, like, oh, Carmelo Anthony, mid-range master. You look at it from 10 to 16 feet in his career, 41%. That doesn't justify taking all those mid-range shots. It doesn't.
Yeah, but if we're still going, I was going to say the only thing I could say about that is it's probably what the coaching staffs are telling the players. But sometimes I feel as though they're so encouraged to get threes up that they'll pass up mid-ranges naturally because of that idea.
Yeah. CP3 on the right elbow, though. Was
he's not going to pass that up usually.
Nasty work. And he probably I wonder if he took more with Phoenix at the end of his career. I wonder. That's interesting. Okay, we're out of here. Dime, love you. Thanks for doing this. For Dime Dropper, I'm Adam Moslin. You've been listening to another Clippers Talk Live. Talk to you guys soon.